I'm watching a lot of the Discord on the Stephen Bartlett'S episode when he's talking about men are at risk of dying out. So fascinating. When women are dealing with femicide, it's not seen as an issue that needs a sit-down conversation, needs to have so many people getting involved. The minute men can't get laid, it's something that everyone needs to be aware of. Everyone needs to discuss how we could stop this and prevent this from prolonging further, as if men are owed women's bodies. And this is something that I have noticed as well, that it is true. A lot of men do feel they are owed a woman's body and her womb. This goes all the way up the chain, but it also trickles down all the way down the chain. I remember a few years ago, I had this man who was very, very interested in me. Now, he had tried for many years, maybe since I was 23 years old. But I remember I did say to myself, do you know what, let me not be so horrible, let me at least allow him to take me on a date. So I went on a date with him, and I just knew it wasn't for me. Like, I knew it wasn't for me, but I was willing to at least give it a chance. Do you see what I mean here? Like, as a woman, I felt like I had to at least give him a chance. If a man didn't find me attractive, do you think he would at least give me a chance? No, he wouldn't. He would have told me, get out of here, I'm not interested. But as a woman, I felt like, let me at least give him a chance, because it's just what you have to do. If a man's really persistent, you at least give him a chance. 2 weeks after, he asked me on a second date, and I just told him, like, this is not for me. I can't go on a second date with you, and I don't want to waste your time. At this point, he told his grandmother, he's told his mother about me, he told his dad about me, he told everyone about me. For why, I don't know. He's already planned it, and I need to make my way. And I told him, I'm not coming. I'm dating someone else. I'm not coming. You know, it was just a date. I didn't say we have a future together. It was just a date. This man rang my phone 65 times within 2 hours. I told him I'm seeing someone else. And he said, yeah, you're seeing someone else, but you went on a date with me and we promised we'll do a second date. Why have you done that? The fact that because you've been persistent, I owed you a relationship, my time, a second date, and potentially me. That was crazy to me. But I remember him saying something during that time. He said, you're lucky that I actually have real feelings for you, and I actually want to take you seriously. Most men would treat you like shit. I actually want to take you seriously, and this is how you treat me? What? What do you mean? You're lucky that I actually want to treat you well. Most men would treat you like shit because most men don't care. But you'd be surprised how many men do believe this. They believe that you owe them a date if they are being persistent. And it made me think to myself, like, is this an alliance that men rely on? The fact that most men, as a base, will treat women like shit. So when they finally give you crumbs of a little bit of attention, they feel like if a man is suffering, if a man wants you, if a man needs something from you, if a man says he's attracted to you, he wants to take you seriously, and he thinks you're his wife, you are to at least give him a chance to prove himself. I think this is why when Steven says, and that guy on his show say things like, what do we do about this? Because there's a bunch of men who are not going to get laid. Men express emotions through physical aggression, and women will just cry, but one will get police called on them. Who's to blame for that? Men, start to point the finger back instead of pointing the finger to women and asking how women are supposed to fix this. It's not ours to fix. We've been fixing. This is not on men to fix.
What is the reason why black women are swiped on less?
Is racism. You know, we have to understand that we exist in a highly racist society. And a lot of people don't like to acknowledge it, don't like to talk about it, like to sweep it under the rug. But when it comes to dating, it shows up. Like in this statistic that you're talking about. Yeah. Now let's think about this. You're interested in a partner, and then you've had no experiences with black people other than maybe watching some black people on television, and your parents and your community have said all kinds of crazy things about black people, and you have all types of negative belief structures around black people, and you're a man, you're, say, a white man, and you're presented with a black woman on a dating app. Are you going to swipe on this person? No, you're not, because you don't understand how incredible she is, how smart she is, how beautiful she is. Like, you have no appreciation. So the reason why they're not swiping is their arrogance, right? I'm sorry, not their arrogance. The reason why they're not swiping is their ignorance. That's what it is. And this is the reason why one of the most important things we can do is widen our social groups. This is the most important thing. I mean, it positively impacts our romantic relationships. It positively impacts our life, is that we need to have a diverse set of people that we interact with and truly understand how beautiful people who are different than us actually are.
78% of women want to date a man who is as educated or as employed as they are. This is just a straight up imbalance. And this is what I've called the tall girl problem. So,
it feels like we're living in a time where women have done so much work to liberate themselves from structures that never suited them. And we've got to the stage now where instead of settling for partners because we need them, we are choosing partners because we want them. We have done so much work to understand that it's better to end up without a partner than it is to end up with a partner who doesn't meet our standards. And by standards, a lot of the time we don't mean financial or education, we just mean basic empathy and emotional availability. Now men find themselves in a structure that doesn't work for them, and instead of doing the work to grow and adapt, they just want to push women back into our boxes and go back to the way things were because that worked for them. They call us too picky and they tell us that ending up alone with cats is the worst thing that could possibly happen to us, when A, we know that's not true, and B, it's just a projection of what they're worried is going to happen to them. The world is changing and men have a lot of catching up to do.
Get a brown or a black woman on this podcast for part 2. Now, get a brown or a black woman on this podcast for part 2 today. Now, I know poor Stephen gets a lot of hate and backlash for his health podcast, and a lot of people have tried to cancel him. But you see, this is the best thing he's released all year. This was such a needed conversation. Men are listening to this podcast because they have daughters, and women are learning more about their bodies. They talked about menopause, contraception, endometriosis, PCOS in such an easy way. But the only thing, women are already marginalised in the healthcare space. But imagine when we add black and brown women into this equation. There was 2 key takeaways from me in this podcast about the whiny woman and how women experience pain and aren't taken as seriously in the healthcare space, and then also how women aren't little men. But when we add genetics and systemic racism inside the healthcare space and looking at statistics about black women in childbirth and how maybe even there's a language barrier between doctor and patient, these things make such a big difference, and it is something that we really, really need to learn about. This is no fault to the podcast, by the way. It was absolutely amazing, and I know part 2 is coming, but please get a black or a brown woman on this podcast so we can talk about it on a deeper level and really understand the issues of women's health inside the healthcare space. It is changing, which is amazing, and we can see more and more data coming out proving some of the things that we knew years ago aren't necessarily true. But I just think that is the missing piece of this puzzle. We need to talk about it.
There are an increasingly large number of women who are just choosing not to get married. And
For the very last time, we are not having a mating crisis. What's happening is that women have access to information and education in ways that they didn't have in previous generations. We can now share stories and choose the bear. We can now own homes, open bank accounts. We know that. And we're not hypergamous as in we mate upwards. It was a necessity because we were blocked from owning things. You centralized through patriarchy the only access to independence and some form of survival and wealth into men, forcing women to have to choose. And as soon as we dismantled parts of the patriarchy to allow access to education, employment, financial stability independently, we exercised our choice. It is not a crisis, it's a liberation.
I think we're seeing the intersectionality of a couple of things. So the first thing is that men are angry. So we have incels, we have school shooters, men are resentful towards women. So I think part of the reason we're seeing this violence against women in the pornography is because there's an angry incel who's home alone, who doesn't believe they're ever going to have sex, believes that women are gatekeeping this. And so the masculine, predatory, systemic, I'm going to teach this woman a lesson. She doesn't get to say no to me. So these kinds of feelings are someone has figured out on a tube site that if I give men this fantasy, they are going to watch it more and more.
And this is what we see. Punish fucking of women. We see punish fucking on women all the time. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to, banging and smashing and.
But you're saying that's a social problem, not a porn industry problem.
Well, so I think what the porn industry is doing, the porn industry is figuring out, this is what all technology is doing.
The machine learning is figuring out.
Machine learning is figuring it out. So as you cited some statistic about, sexual activity, like more virgins than ever before, more sexual frustration than ever before, more frustration with life than ever before. And so let's give you this extreme thing that's checking.
America, 1 in 3 males under the age of 30 has not had sex in the last 12 months.
The point that he claims to be making in this video is that we're producing too many of the most dangerous people in the world, which he says is the young, broke, and alone man. And I find it interesting that he started the video by talking about how much sex they're having, because we shouldn't be measuring men's mental health or their amount of success by the frequency in which they're having intercourse. But if you really want to have that conversation, then I think you have to at least acknowledge that men are lonely for the same reasons they aren't having sex. Because that lack of emotional intelligence that prevents them from having intimate experiences is also what's prohibiting them from having healthy relationships. And it's also why we're seeing married men who aren't having sex and lonely men who are having an abundance of it. But insisting that this is somehow the fault of women is wrong, because a man's stability should never be dependent on his level of access to a woman's body. And to imply that it is takes responsibility off the person who actually needs to be doing the work. Men aren't getting angrier because they aren't having sex. They aren't having sex because they're angry. And until we stop pretending like sex is the fundamental building block of masculinity, we aren't going to see healthier men or better relationships with women.
I have never been a fan of the Diary of the CEO because it's not the first time they've disguised misogyny within intellectualism as talking points in discussion, whilst the commonality is still to blame women for the actions of men. And in their latest episode that many of you probably would have seen, they're having a discussion around how incels are slowly dying off in society, which is centered around the choices that they're making. And then we see the question being asked by Stephen about why isn't there any intervention around how we can help these young men. And interesting enough, they don't name the patriarchal structures that is oppressing men because most of the time that's the reality of the conversation that many of these men fail to acknowledge, because patriarchy hurts men as much as it hurts women. I also want to add that their idea of intervention was very vague. They then go on to say that these young men will not proceed to have families. It's a wild take because feminism has allowed women to no longer be controlled by these same men that has always relied on patriarchal structures. And now because feminism as a movement has destabilized the aspect of patriarchy to give women that autonomy to choose, now all of a sudden society needs to intervene.
Is anyone else starting to feel like Diary of a CEO is just intellectual red pill content? Because what do you mean we have to intervene in the men not passing their genes on? What does intervention into the men needing to pass their genes down look like?
If you're a woman who has gone through your education, you've dedicated yourself to achieving a degree, your mother's generation wasn't able to achieve this, and you're the first person that's maybe gone to uni or got a bachelor's or got a master's or got a PhD, you think, right, I'm 31, I'd love to settle down, this would be amazing for me. Where are all of the men at? Not only now are you competing with all of the other increasing cohort of women that are high achievers with status, employment, and education, but you're also competing with a 21-year-old barista who still lives at home with her parents for this small cohort of guys.
As a woman who's done a PhD, none of us are competing for you. Alright? You are not the goal. And the thing is, this sort of language and this sort of rhetoric is harmful for both men and women. If you are treating people as social status symbols, then you can actually have a relationship with them. You treat them as something that can be obtained and kept. And this is the logic of the patriarchy. But the thing is as well, as the economy has gotten worse, we've used this like neoliberal logic to also infringe on our relationships. And this is what we see with all this like hustler culture, high value man, high value woman sort of language, because it reduces everybody down to their use value in the economy. Men will return to these old social conventions because it's useful to them in a failing economy. Margaret Thatcher said there is no such thing as society, only individuals and their families. What she meant is only men and the women at home that sustain them and do the unpaid labour that men rely on. And the biggest problem with these podcasts, like Diary of a CEO, like this philosophy man kind of modern wisdom, as Chris Williamson's called, is that there is absolutely no mention of systemic issues. Everything is put on the individual. This neoliberal logic, like pull yourself up by your bootstraps or whatever, enforces the idea that if you fail, you have no one else to blame. Ignores systemic and historical oppression. But it also turns us into all these mini projects. Like, if you are not self-optimizing, if you are not always reinventing yourself, then you will perish. It becomes all about speed, hyper-individualism, greed, and when relationships get swept up in this, then there is simply no point of being in one. Relationships are everything that this culture is not. It's about slowness, intimacy, it's about closeness. It's not about self-optimization, it's about otherness. Accepting that you are with somebody who is not yourself. And that's the challenge. It's not about objectification. It's about conversation and self-reflection and love. Remember, we can't have a democracy without informed citizens, and it's an emergency.
This Diary of a CEO nonsense is so much worse than I expected. I saw a few clips on TikTok and I was like, what in the Gilead is going on here? And now I'm watching more of the conversation on YouTube and it's even worse because they're talking about how, like, should society intervene in the declining birth rate? Not from the framing of like, how can society make life easier and healthier for the women that are birthing these children and raising these children? Like, how can we institute paternity leave and affordable healthcare and affordable childcare and make sure our kids are safe and fed in school? That's not what they're talking about. No, those things would actually improve the birth rate, but that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about how sad it is for these men who have been excluded from the gene pool because they can't find anyone to date, and how that's a mass extinction event, according to them. I've said this before. I've said that the male loneliness epidemic is just natural selection at work. But it's working as it should. If you can't find a partner to pass your genes along to, then you don't get to pass on your genes to the next generation. That's how it works. You are not owed that. No one is owed that. And any sort of conversation where men who use big words and have a doctor in front of their name and act like pseudo-intellectuals, implying that men are somehow owed a woman so that they can pass on their genes, or else this is a societal problem that we all need to intervene in, that's really dangerous and disturbing. What also annoys me about this is they're not bringing up the very simple solution of, oh, if a man wants to pass along his genes and he has a lot of trouble with dating because of his social anxiety, like they're talking about, why doesn't he just go to a sperm bank? Why doesn't he just hire a surrogate? Why doesn't he just find someone to co-parent with platonically? Why doesn't he just find a consenting woman? He is not entitled to a woman. But there are solutions. If you really want to pass along your genes, literally just go to a sperm bank. They'll give you a cup. But no, these dudes don't want to hear it. They want to make it a woman's problem to solve.
There is a anti-family message that comes about, that there's a girl with the list on TikTok. She is open to seeing the world as she wishes. I think by the sounds of things, it is a really good idea that she's not a mother, and I'm glad that she's choosing to not have kids. But that tone, that sentiment is like prevalent.
Name drop. I've never listened to this podcast before. I had no idea who these men were before this morning. I just wanted to share because you guys know one of my major stretch goals for 2026 is to be blamed for the declining birth rate by some major right-wing news organization. And this is not that, but we're getting closer. We're getting close. I can taste it. And it's not even 2026 yet.
Guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're enjoying, please make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. So guys, the new trending topic right now is on TikTok, which concerns Steve Bartlett, who is the creator of the podcast Diary of a CEO. Guys, to be honest with you, yeah, the first time I got introduced to Steve Bartlett was in 2017, and I can't particularly point my hand on the first episode I saw concerning him, which is quite crazy. That's a long time, which is in 2017. In 2017, I can remember when I laid on my bed and I was just scrolling through TikTok trying to watch Love Island. Then I saw a TikTok recommendation that just popped up, and it was Diary of a CEO. Then it says Steve Bartlett. When I clicked on it, because I clicked on it actually was because it had like 1.2 million views. When I clicked on it, the conversations on the platform did seem very intellectual. But guys, do you know there's something about a gut feeling that rarely lies? You know, a gut feeling that rarely lies. Guys, gut feelings are always kind of 99% correct. Gut feelings are correct. Gut feelings are always correct, and it's crazy to me, guys, when you see something out of the ordinary and you find out that your spirit doesn't just matches with that thing. Guys, listen to your spirit. Your spirit is trying to tell you something, and most especially your spirit is your guiding grace. So over the years, guys, of course, the podcast has grown. The podcast on its own has particularly had guests such as Simon Cowell, Jada Pinkett Smith, Boris Johnson, who is who was the Prime Minister before Rishi Sunak, and well, now we've got Keir Starmer, and we've got Seth Rogen on it, Maisie Williams. I remember the episode where Maisie Williams was on, where she talked about how she's suffering from depression, and how being on the series, the very famous series, which launched her to very great and quick stardom, which she was starring alongside the likes, of course, alongside people like Sophie Turner and other people as well. So I remembered on that episode where she was shedding tears, and she talked of launching of how Game of Thrones, the HBO series, launched her to great stardom, and how she suffered as a result of depression. She's got more money she can ever spend, and because I think like for an episode they were paying about 4 million, is it? Because at first when they started the series, like people like, I've forgotten the man who played Khal Drogo, who later went on to play is it Mayor King or whatever, I don't know, Aquaman, I don't know what's his name. Why am I forgetting what name Aquaman is? Guys, let me check on Google who played Aquaman. I've forgotten his name, but because it keeps Aquaman. So who is Aquaman? Yeah, Jason Momoa. Yeah, that's the name. So I can remember like where she was, because the thing is, before that episode came out with Maisie Williams, people were saying like the first seasons of Game of Thrones they really didn't play much, because the series started having a lot of fandom and a lot of guests. After season 1 had aired, and he himself even said the series, he never expected the series to like really blow, or the series to go really far. To be fair, guys, apart from all the movies I've watched with Jason Momoa, which is only a few, even with Aquaman, the best of the best, guys, I don't know if I should watch Aquaman, because I've never watched Aquaman. When I put on the first few oh my god, the first few minutes, I was really bored, because Aquaman also had the star, is it someone's ex-wife? Who is that man who took his famous wife to court, who had now house a child for Elon Musk? Guys, I'm just going off topic right now. Okay, let's focus on the topic. Okay, so but I'm gonna try to watch Aquaman again. So back to the main topic. So when Maisie Williams was there, I've talked about how she talked about the depression and how she made lots of money from Game of Thrones, but she's not still happy. That I don't know if she also said in the episode that she's estranged from her mother or family, but well, maybe I'm getting it wrong. When I watched that, because the thing is, his episodes, like the Diary of the CEO, is about 3 hours long, 1 hour long, and everything. Guys, that is fucking a lot. Oh, I don't know why I'm swearing. I'll not swear again. Guys, that is a lot. That is a lot. That is a lot. That is a lot. That is just a lot of time to sit and watch the podcast and everything. But going back to what I want to talk about, there was something like, for example, with Maisie Williams' story, I felt connected a little bit in terms of the depression and everything. But one thing I was missing from my heart is one thing I was missing from my heart is Steve. There's just something that was not clicking for me when it came to Steve Bartlett. But one thing I'll admit is that I went with the crowd to, if I wanted to watch any video of him, this is how I did program my mind to actually receive him, was that, oh, if maybe he's having this million of views, then he's doing something right. That's how I always approached when I wanted to watch his stuff, you know. But if I would have known, I would say, I'm not gonna sit here and say I knew it. To be fair, I did knew it, but one thing I will criticize myself for doing was following the crowd. Yes, I did follow the crowd, and that's something that us as society, we have to learn how to do, even though we'll keep on falling into the bandwagon of following the crowd and say, oh, someone is perfect, someone is nice. And I think there's another person whom I've never really connected with his content. I was first of all introduced to him through Facebook and everything, but I just can't connect to his stuff. And he was also in the Steve Bartlett in the Diary of the CEO. I don't know who his name, what is his name, but there's somebody that also does Facebook content about life lesson videos, where he will say, like, okay, let me tell you how his video title goes. Man meets woman, he abuses her, he doesn't know who she is, all these other things. I don't know what his name is, I've just forgotten his name. He's Indian and he has like really, really brown hazel eyes, but I've forgotten his name, guys. You see, the reason why I keep forgetting his name is because I've never really connected with his content. Any video I see him, I just skip. I don't know. It's because it's just something about him that he, both him and Steve Bartlett, and even with the Chris Williamson that he's just had on his show, those three men, there's just something about them that I will never ever connect to. I just will never connect to. I never will connect to them. I never will connect to them because there's just something about them that it just rubs me the wrong way. It just rubs me the wrong way. It's something I cannot control. It's something I cannot just even try to begin to imagine why I don't like them. It's not because I don't like them, it's just that I cannot connect with them. So guys, he has come under the rock because most of his recent content is like a content that people are saying is content that is being disguised as intellectual conversations, but it's not. And I agree with them. I've always, and you see, this is one of the reasons why I've never really agreed with him. Is the misogyny. Because I'll talk about how he spoke concerning how he came to be as a human being, which I'm going, of course, you guys already know, I'm now diving into the topic of his dad and his mom. This is how he describes it. The way he sort of talks about his mother, is kind of a very demeaning way. This is how he puts it. Okay, he says his father is kind of like this white scholar that meets this woman from Botswana, or is it Zimbabwe? Because I've just looked and they said he was born in Botswana. And the way that he describes it, he says, oh, he's kind of like this the father is kind of this white scholar who met an uneducated African woman. Or what, like, there's just something of what he was saying that rubbed me the wrong way. And thank God that if you go and look at the comment section, I was not the only person who felt that way. He sort of come out to like describe his mother as someone who was uneducated, as someone who was this and that, which is quite crazy. It's quite crazy to me when I'm having all these realizations. Oh my God. It was quite crazy, you know. It's quite crazy to have these realizations and everything. So, you know, it's quite crazy. So, oh my God. I'm just having now, as I'm making this video, guys, I'm having a moment of an epiphany. And I don't like this feeling. I don't really like it. I don't like it. And it's crazy to me why he would talk of his mother with such how can I describe it, in such like disgust, like in such kind of like with such vim. And he also describes his mom in a very uncouth way, and it's quite crazy to me. And well, as I've said, like in his previous uploads of the daily episode he likes to post and everything, it's been quite misogynistic. And what the guests he will have on there, like the Chris Williamsons and other people, I've always noticed that most of these topics on these podcasts is about sex and how to please men in relationships, talking about why men cheat and why this, that. And remember, he had that woman on his show that was being accused of begging to be a side chick of a married man. I've forgotten her name. Oh my God, isn't that some crazy stuff? And that woman, of course, we already know she's male-centered, like because of how she likes to describe curating everything for men and everything. It's always been about men for the past years, I'm talking years. It's always been about men. They've talked about like the men lonely epidemic, talking about women's womb and marriage, especially in Christian, like especially in like the Christian, Chris Williamson episode. That was a very misogynistic episode, and it's very like, especially in this incel culture that has always been, and I pray it never will always be. It was really bad. It was really bad because it's always about the male epidemic, how men are lonely, why men cheat, why and why women don't know how to please men. Oh my God, like it's crazy to me. And it's crazy that he has been with his long-term girlfriend who he just recently engaged. Is it 2026 he confirmed, and he's not still married her. So especially in the part where Chris was talking about, oh, so you're a woman now, you want to have your PhD, you've had your PhD, then you've had your degree, now you're 25, and now a girl who is 21 who is a barrister that's living at home with a mom, now you have to compete with her. Shut up. Talking about you have to compete with her. Shut the hell up. Guys, that statement alone tells me what the kind of man he is. Guys, why is it that, have you ever noticed that he talks about 25? Guys, tell me, do you know the age, how the significance of the age 25 for a human? Guys, it is a known fact that at the age of 25, the human brain fully develops. I don't even still believe that crap also. I believe at the age of 25, that is when the frontal lobe starts developing. And it keeps developing till we die. So it's crazy to me that a 21-year-old, guys, let me tell you something. Whether you are as dull as an ant, or bold as a lion, or wise as an elephant and strong, guys, if you're 21 and you grow up to the age of 25, fully 25, not just, I just made 25 years old. Let's say 1 month after 25, guys, the way you think shifts. The way you think shifts. It just shifts. It shifts. Guys, I'm not even the same person that I was at the age of 25. I'm not the same person that I was at the age of 25. And it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. It's just crazy to me. And people do not understand that. People don't understand that it takes a lot for a human being to keep developing. And that is why which is another video I'm going to make, especially with the Dax Sherpat and the Kristen Bell situation, and also with the Cher situation. Like, it's crazy to me. That's why you see someone like Cher. Cher has always been somebody who is very strong has a very strong opinion, or should I say opinionated? I don't know the word. I don't know how to pronounce the word. Someone that has had a strong personality and opinion. And she's always kept this mystery about herself, especially and someone like Cher, in her younger years, she looks like the kind of person who would have made an excellent trophy wife, regardless of how much money she had. She would have made an excellent trophy wife. But the fact that she chooses not to make an excellent trophy wife and also be the man that makes people trophy wives, guys, on its own, it's grand. It's really grand. And do I support her? Of course, maybe I do support her thinking that way, because there was this famous interview she did and said her mother wanted her to grow up and marry a rich man. She says no, she's not growing up to marry a rich man. She's the rich man. So I think it's just because of the rise. It has never been the rise of incel culture. I mean, of course, we are in 2026 and people are still keeping up. People will make sure that the culture of incel, like this incel culture, and also the culture of misogyny or misogynoir, will never die. Period. There are people who uphold it, even including women who are referred to as patriarchal princesses. It's never gonna die, and that's the crazy part. It's never gonna die. It's never gonna. And even this thing of, like, say, this soft feminine, how to speak to a man, how to do that, how to bring a feminine energy, guys, please. It doesn't matter how soft you speak to men. The thing is, they will never ever value you as a person who is supposed to be valued if they don't want to value you. End of discussion. And it's so sad that no matter how good you are, people will still not value you. It doesn't matter, they just don't like you. So guys, that's all I've got to say in the matter. Please make sure you subscribe, like, and comment. We can disagree, but guys, we should do it in a very in a very nice manner, in a manner that is respectful. Thank you.